Tammy, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. There was only one word when it came to your superpower, and that was limitless strength. I had the pleasure of getting to know you at a World Vision trip to Zambia about a year ago. And about a month after that, I went through the hardest experience of my life. And I remember just popping it on the group chat, just letting everyone know. And within 30 seconds, I think you called me and was like, I've got you. This is what we are going to do. And that language of we has been consistent throughout. And I feel like I've had the honor and the privilege of feeding off of your strength for the last year. So to sit here with you today in this studio, talking about your strength and who you are is one of the biggest gifts. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
No, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you for having me here. I feel like I've learned so much through all the podcasts that I listen to on my way to and from work every day. And I feel like they're like Chloe Hooper therapy sessions every time I listen to them. So I feel lucky, and I'm ready. I'm ready for my therapy session with Chloe.
I don't know if it's going to be therapy. I think I need the therapy right now. Tammy, limitless strength. What does strength mean to you?
I mean, one, I'm super humbled that you see that as my superpower. I mean, I really am. I mean, to me, the fact that I could have been there for you, and that me just giving a bit of support, because it was really all you, but just standing beside you and reminding you of what you're capable of, was a no-brainer for me. And so if I can play that role in people's lives, and I think sometimes we struggle to see in ourselves what other people see in us. And so I like to help people see what is clearly so obvious to others, and hopefully unlock that little bit of confidence and a little bit of self-awareness that sometimes we don't see in ourselves, which is really all I was doing with you at that time.
I can't thank you enough for that moment. I'll never, ever forget that phone call for as long as I live. And I think it really does show how when you're at your most vulnerable, the people that show up for you, you just never forget that, do you? You never forget that moment in time. I think we can all support each other on a daily basis in terms of when things are good and when things are thriving, and we can support people. But it's when shit hits the fan and
Yeah.
we're broken
Yeah.
and someone's there for us. I think that's what is truly game changing in friendships. Who's been there for you in that way? Like, where did you learn that this was so important?
Yeah, I mean, I have a long list of people who have been there for me over the years. But, that whole, I guess for me, it wasn't just about when things hit the fan, but it's also when you didn't notice anyone was watching or anyone saw it in you. And I'm going to go way back. I remember my first internship. I think I would have been like 17, and I was working at an insurance company. And I was a natural intern fixing the Xerox machine, loading receipts, those kind of things. But I took my job really seriously, and I thought it was such a privilege. And I remember at the end of my internship, this very senior vice president at the organization came up to me. And at this time, I mean, I'm 17, but I had aspirations to go into banking, to go into finance. I was always very driven. And this vice president comes up to me and she said, I have been watching you throughout your entire internship and have been so impressed. And my husband is the treasurer of this company, and he's looking for someone with a really strong work ethic. And I'd love to recommend you, for a role in his team. And I think that was the first time where it kind of unlocked in me. One, again, I was so honored, that she noticed me. I didn't even know that she noticed me. When you're a young intern and you think the people really seeing you don't know who you are, or notice anything that you do. And Doreen was her name. And when she noticed me and then connected me with that great opportunity, and then, things just started to kind of build from there. And there have been numerous times, particularly in my professional life, where I've just worked really hard and tried to do my best at all times. And there's been someone somewhere in a position of power that has noticed me and then given me an opportunity. And so I guess there's something inside me that feels I want to be that person for someone. that little unlocking, that little recognition, meant the world to me and unlocked a lot for me. And it's been step by step where those kind of opportunities have continued to manifest. And so if I can play that role in people's lives, both professionally but also personally, I feel like it's such an honor to do that. And why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we do that?
I want us to talk about self-belief, because I think self-belief and strength are so connected to one another. What does self-belief mean to you? Because I think when you tell that story around the internship and someone else believing in you, what about believing in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have a feeling of why not me? Why not me? And it's kind of as simple as that. Like, why not me? Why can't I do something like that? Why couldn't I go for that internship in the first place? Why couldn't I go, for the next job or the next opportunity? Why not me? And that really sits with me and motivates me and pushes me and encourages me. Like, why not me? What's the worst that's going to happen? I don't get that opportunity, or I learn something along the way, or I find out why not me. So it kind of, I have a lot of self-doubt at times, don't get me wrong. Everyone does, I think. But I guess part of me just doesn't allow that to anchor me somewhere. I just think, why not give something a go? And why not push myself out of my comfort zone and try new things? And, what do I have to lose?
I love that question, why not me?
Yeah.
When Melissa Doyle came on, she spoke about the fact that our brain will always default to what's the worst that can happen, and she reframes it to what's the best that can happen.
Yeah.
And then I love your build of them and why not me?
Yeah, and I think I've been given the gift, and I'll thank my mom for this. I am such an optimist that sometimes it doesn't occur to me to spend much time in the scenario of what's the worst that can happen. I look at probably a little bit more entrepreneurial on what's the opportunity. That being said, I'm a banker, and whenever I think I'm entrepreneurial, I meet with some of my entrepreneur clients, and I'm like, no, I'm pretty risk averse. I still am a banker, but I'm somewhere in the middle there. And so I think that, that comes probably from just a mindset of, if you work hard, if you do your research, if you're constantly putting everything into it, what's the potential that might lie ahead, rather than immediately going to the negative. And for that, I do need to make sure that I surround myself with people who do automatically go to the negative, because I think it's important. You do have to have that lens sometimes, particularly with what I do. And so you do have to, for me, it's probably more of an effort to sit there in the negative than it is to sit there in the positive. So I do have to put deliberate effort into that, because it is important to do that risk assessment. But yeah, I think I'm also a very naturally optimistic person, which kind of helps with that. Why not me? What is the opportunity? How fun is this kind of thinking?
And tell me the moments in your life where that why not me has proven to be, yes, it's me.
There's probably been a few. I would say, if I was to go back, when I went for, graduating university and went for the job interview at JP Morgan Chase. And, I was never the smartest person in the room, but I felt like I had really strong street smarts and a really strong work ethic that's right up there with the best of them. And I remember when JP Morgan hired me, I was like, oh, I guess I didn't really, because I'm competing with people who went to Ivy League and who had connections, and I didn't have any of that. And, fast forward about 5 years later, and I was on a very serendipitous trip to Australia. And on a boat with my sister in Queensland, and just enjoying life on holiday. And I came across a bunch of Irish backpackers who I'm still friends with today, and realized that we were the same age, and they were just enjoying life and making the most of it. And I thought to myself, I have taken life so seriously, probably from that 17-year-old intern to now this kind of 25 or 20-something-year-old banker, a New York City banker. And I'm forgetting to just pause and enjoy life. And I thought, you know what? If these guys, and they were brilliant in their own right as well, but if they can push pause on their careers and just enjoy life, why not me? And I came home from that trip, and I can still remember my mom picked me up from JFK Airport, and she was like, "How was your trip?" I'm like, "Great. I'm quitting my job and selling my apartment in Manhattan, and I'm going to travel around the world." And, the optimist in my mom, which I think she handed down to me, instead of going to the fear of how could you leave such a great job? How could you, do all that? Leave me, leave New York, everything. She just immediately started clapping and saying yay, and just like, good on you. Well, she didn't say good on you because she's not Aussie, but, whatever the Cuban version of good on you was. And, and I did. And it was the best decision I ever made. And, that's continued to drive me. Like, just if something is not working, why not? Like, spending the time and really figuring out why, and then having the courage to make that change that's necessary. And if it works for other people, why not me?
Don't you think it shows the importance of, like, for all of us, even for you and I in this moment right now, of like, we live in a bubble in our industries, and like, who else could we be learning from and taking inspiration from that's just doing life a little bit differently?
Exactly.
And I just think that's a really good reminder for me, because I do live in this bubble,
Yeah.
and I'm not necessarily getting inspiration from people outside of it. So that's a really good reminder for all of us there. You mentioned connections and that you didn't really have many connections when you were growing up, which I laughed at and wrote down, because I was like, I think you're actually probably one of the most connected women I know now. Can we talk a little bit about that journey and relationship building? And I just think the stories you've told me about when you've ended up in different places through knowing different people, I'd love to go there for a moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't have connections into corporate America. I mean, daughter of two immigrants, a political refugee mom that came from Cuba when Castro took over, and a Basque dad who came over somewhat on a whim, but there's a bigger backstory on there. But, I had a big family that welcomed everyone always. And so I was always surrounded by, love and entertainment, and seeing connections happening, in the community. And I guess I started to learn to forge my own path in driving that connections. And actually, I was a super, super shy, introverted young child. I mean, like, hugging my mom by the leg, hiding behind her, probably until my teens, which a lot of people find that hard to believe. And then I realized that I wasn't really going to get the outcomes and live the life that I wanted to lead being that way. So it kind of forced me to come out of my shell. And I don't think I've gone back since. But I love meeting new people. I'm a super curious person, and I love understanding what makes people tick. I love seeing where I can help people by connecting them. So I think it comes from that kind of position. I love making connections and putting people together, or, helping businesses connect with other businesses that are related, or helping my clients connect. It's something that really drives me, and I just enjoy it. I enjoy seeing people that connect with one another that are a bit unexpected. And value has come from that, but that wasn't the driver. The driver was actually the joy I see in connecting others and learning about other people.
Curiosity has come as the overarching key theme in all of these podcasts. Every woman I interview, it's like curiosity. I want to try and capture the bit where you go from hanging onto your mum's legs to now being this limitlessly strong woman that I see in front of me, and that I know because I was laughing when you said you're an introvert, because that was just kind of comical to me, knowing the way you are. How did that happen? Like, I know you said you used the word forced, but I want to know what were the moments like, with so many people who are more introverted listening to this, who would love to be sitting where you are now. Can we try and capture that?
I mean, we're going back to like my teenage years, and I think it comes back to the why not me type of thing. I saw I saw people in leadership roles at school, for example, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then because I think I have like somewhat of an engineer brain. In fact, I often say if I knew of the career of engineers or that women could have been engineers, maybe I would have gone down that path because I love it. And I'm a big kind of root cause, analysis kind of person. And I think I started working backwards. Well, if, I want to have that leadership role at school one day, if I aspire to that, what are those attributes? Well, people need to know me. I need to get to know other people. All right, I need to come out of my shell. Okay, I need to, actually let people in. And then it kind of just started breeding like that, I would say. And then you start doing it a little bit more. And then, I don't know, my confidence started building. And I realized that, public speaking isn't as scary as I always thought it was. In fact, we all get scared before we public speak. Even to this day, even before this, my palms are getting sweaty, but in an exciting way. So it kind of just started from there. And then, I don't know, then you just kind of grow into it. For me, and, it wasn't like this one singular moment. But it grew over time. And I think the more I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and kind of proved to myself that I could do something, the more motivated I was to push myself again out of my comfort zone, and so on and so on. And so that's what probably keeps driving that.
I love the phrase, you build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts. It's like
oh, you said it much better than I did.
You prove to yourself that you can do it, and then prove to yourself something bigger. And that's what Limitless is all about. Like, I wanted to make sure we created something that pushed people to their limits and made them question, am I putting a ceiling over myself, or am I, to your point, who am I looking at thinking I want to be them? How can I be more like them? And copy that behavior? Because although we're authentic and all unique, there's someone who's done it before, right? Like, I think we try and reinvent the wheel so much. And it's like, to your point, I looked at them, thought, what are they doing? And how can I be like that? You're not going to like the next question. How can people be more like you? I knew you wouldn't know one.
I mean, I think if you're right. I don't like the question. Because really what I want is people to be more like them. I want, like, you be you. If I were to kind of, have a tattoo, it would be you be you. And I think that's what it's all about. Like, and then how do you get to the bottom of who you are? For me, it took, leaving my home country, my home city, leaving a lot and kind of stripping everything back. And I came from a big family, and I'm the youngest in the family. And, I think there are almost like stereotypical roles that we all play depending on like our birth order or our family order. And I had to take a very bold decision, and maybe a little bit extreme, but it worked out for me, by kind of separating myself from that comfort zone of being surrounded by loved ones all the time and having that safety net to see, what is me being me really like, versus balancing what I want to do and what I think I'm capable of doing, but also the role that I play in a very big family. And so I would really encourage people to really figure out what changes they need to make in their life if they're not feeling that they know who they are and they know what you be you actually means for them. What needs to tweak? What changes do you need to make? And maybe it's just a month away. Maybe it's just 2 weeks off. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's meditating. It doesn't have to be as drastic as I did. But I think the sooner that we all kind of come into our own and start to feel a little bit more comfortable with what that means, I think that's when you start to feel whatever is your superpower.
I think a lot of people feel stuck at the moment, who I'm speaking to from a coaching point of view. Like, I done a session this morning, and there was a load of women in the group, and basically one of them was like, oh, I'd love to travel, but I've got kids, so it's just never possible for me now. Like, that's off the cards. And obviously for yourself, you've traveled with your children and, moved into different countries. I think I'd love to talk a little bit about that and how actually that fearless mentality of why not me
Mm-hmm.
kicks in those moments, because I've just been back in the UK, and I was speaking to a friend, and she's potentially got married a little bit too early, had a kid a little bit too early. I say early, we're in our 30s, right? But but still, she's made some decisions that she's not necessarily
Yeah.
100% happy with. And she's like, Chloe, I'm just stuck. And in my head, I'm like, you're not. Like, you're never stuck. Like, you know, you're not stuck until you're dead. Like, let's get you out of this.
Yeah.
Luckily, she or her husband don't listen to this, so we're, we're fine. But for anyone that's feeling stuck, Tammy, how can we take some of your strength?
You know, I don't think that there's any kind of blanket piece of advice that's going to solve someone from being stuck beyond really trying to get, again, it goes back to that engineering mind. What's the root cause? What is it really? And sometimes it takes a long time. Like if I keep on going back to this move from New York to Australia, because it really was transformational for me, it took me a year to get to the bottom of what I needed to change. So it wasn't like, yes, the trip to Australia and that fateful Whitsundays cruise was definitely like the last straw, but it was months in the making where I felt stuck at work, and I was doing really well at JP Morgan. I was getting promoted. I put my house on the market because I thought my apartment on the market. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just living in the wrong spot within New York City. I mean, like I was just trying different things. In fact, before I got on that plane to go to Australia the first time, I had just been accepted a role at a different investment bank. And I was going to quit, and I had accepted the role and was going to, tell JP Morgan when I got back from my holiday, I was going to quit and move to this other role. And so I was trying to get to the bottom of why I felt stuck, and everything I tried just wasn't actually the answer, until that time where I was like, oh my God, the answer is New York City is not my future. I actually need to change my environment. And there were, a bunch of reasons why that was the case. And then I had to have the courage to follow through with it. Because when I got back, I mean, JP Morgan was amazing. They didn't want me to go. The recruiter who, and the hiring manager at the other firm was upset that I had, they had held this role for me. And then I had family members. I thought I was crazy leaving what was such a promising career and a, fabulous apartment. Not many 20-something-year-olds had an apartment in Manhattan. Thanks, Mom, for encouraging me to buy and not rent. But and instilling a strong work ethic and savings pattern. But I had to have the courage to know, no, this was right for me. And it wasn't, at that point, I wasn't making a decision for forever. I thought I was making a decision for 1 to 2 years. But it became fairly clear, relatively quickly, that actually my home was somewhere else. So for those that are feeling stuck, I really encourage just try. Just try to nudge yourself a bit to get to the bottom of what's making you feel stuck and how you could feel unstuck. And don't get discouraged when the first thing you try isn't really scratching that itch, hasn't really solved it. Keep on trying, keep on trying different ways and trying different things, and have the courage to also back yourself, because you'll find a lot of people will give you advice on what they would do, and or what they feel comfortable with doing, or that's relevant for them and their risk appetite, if you will. But they're not you. They're not inside your head. They didn't have the same experiences that you had. They didn't have the same growing up. They didn't have the same choices along the way. So no one can really solve your problems except for you. And so it's important to get advice, but you also have to take it with a grain of salt and apply it through the lens that's relevant for you, I think.
I think I love that quote around, and I think I might have made this up, but but I'm okay with being the villain in your story because I'm going to be the hero in mine. Like, I just love that concept. I think I actually made that up a little while ago.
That's a good one.
But I do think that you have to, when you're going to make a bold move, when you're going to make a strategic move, to your point, you will have so many people question you.
Yeah.
And knowing deep down within you that, like, no, this is my fight and this is what I want to do, and I'm willing to take the positives and negatives that come with it.
Yeah.
and it's okay if I upset people along the way. Like, I think as women, we're so like, we've got to people please, we've got to be the good girl, we've got to behave and, you know, stay small. And there's just that fire that we need to have in us to go, I'm going to do this my way.
Yeah. And I think, you know, over time, I think you will, you know, you pick up really trusted advisors that you can talk to and lean on, and that will tell you things sometimes that you don't want to hear but need to hear. I'm so lucky I have that in my partner and my husband. He tells me he tells me things that I definitely don't want to hear sometimes, but I need to hear. But he's also probably my number one cheerleader, probably tied for first with my mom, I would say. And you know, everyone's and so when he gives me advice, I don't hold that equally to when someone just off the street gives me advice. And you know, I think sometimes, I don't think that was always the case. You know, I think sometimes in the past I kind of seek advice from everyone and almost kind of give everyone equal power in their advice giving in my head. And you start, I think over time I started to learn, okay, not everyone should have the same weight in my decision making. And ultimately, the final decision is mine. But, you know, you start to see, you know, who are those really, really trusted advisors. And when you have them, you hold them dear.
And it's also, do you want to be that person? Like, I feel like I've been guilty in the past of like taking advice from people. I'm like, but I don't respect decisions you make in your life. So why am I going, oh, this is gospel?
Really good point. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, you gotta watch out for that too.
What's the best bit of advice your husband's ever given you?
Don't joke around so much. And it's actually a really good, I'm a joker. And I think sometimes, particularly when I was younger, I used to use sarcasm to help me get out of uncomfortable scenarios or kind of not know how to deal with something. But he's really pointed out that not everyone communicates that way. And so sometimes if I'm too flippant with a topic, that could really hurt someone else, you know, when it's not taken as seriously. So that's something that's really helped me from a leadership perspective, particularly because I am somewhat of a casual kind of engaging person. You know, I'm not kind of your usual stiff banker, which sometimes works in my favor, sometimes doesn't. And so it is good to have that other perspective to think about, particularly from a leadership perspective. And then, you know, the other amazing probably piece of advice, which I think some children grew up with this, with the parent, you know, my mom in my ear, like, you could be anything you want to be. Like, don't let anyone put any limits on you. And so, and, you know, I think you've had a few guests on the podcast that had someone similar like that in their ear as they were growing up. And that's something I really, really took to heart. So between the combination of, and where my husband was coming from is know your self-awareness, like know the impact that you're having on others, which sometimes I struggle with. Because I still feel like I'm, like I say, Tammy from the block. You know? I'm still, you know, you could take the girl out of Jersey. I still feel like that kind of same 17-year-old working at the insurance company, just trying to fix a Xerox machine better than anyone else kind of thing. I sometimes forget that I have an impact on other people, and that is a gift and something that I should honor and treasure and be aware of. So I have that kind of in my ear, and then I have my mom just, you know, go for it type of thing.
I love that, because when I met you, I met Tammy from the block. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I love this woman. And then I was almost disappointed when I found out what you did for work, because I was like, oh, she's not going to be very available. Like, she's going to be busier than the kind of friend I'm looking for. Yeah. But you do have that like, you'd have no idea what you do for work. And you just mentioned the whole stiff banker comment. And I love the way that you almost spoke about that with a level of self-awareness of like, I know when I need to lean into the parts of me that will be appropriate and the parts of me that won't. But there was this level of authenticity that stayed there in that conversation. How do you stay authentic in the rooms where I'm potentially more male-dominated, more serious, got the more stiff banker kind of approach? Yeah. How do you stay true to yourself then?
It hasn't always been easy. It definitely hasn't always been easy. And there have been times as I've been kind of coming up through the ranks where I've really questioned my style. I mean, there were times where my silly little thing, but my hair is naturally curly, and I was told, like, wear it pulled back, or if I wear it down and curly, it looks unprofessional, or like things like that. That really, particularly when you're young and someone's saying this to you, becomes a huge impact, because then it chips away at your feeling of feeling free to be yourself and your self-confidence. So, but fast forward throughout the years, and there were times where, yeah, my accent, the amount of times people are like, oh, you're so American. Let me tell you, nobody says that, and it's meant as a compliment. So then I'm questioning the words I use, the tone of my voice. I don't hear my accent, and then I'm questioning my accent, and all these things that start getting inside your head. So it's definitely been a journey. It got to a point, this was years ago, where I felt probably so overwhelmed trying to balance who I truly was and how I wanted to communicate and lead versus what others around me looked like, sounded like, acted like, that it almost broke me. And I remember I would go home and, I would kind of like hold it all together at work. And then I'd get home and I'd be so snappy with my kids, so snappy with my husband. And I was like, oh my goodness, the people I love the most are getting the worst of me. And everyone else is getting kind of like professional, kind Tammy. Something feels wrong here. And I took the advice that I often give people when they're struggling, call for help. And so I called, the employee assistance program that we have at our workplace, and they set me up with a counselor to talk to. And I remember sharing with her some experiences I was having at work. And I was like, I don't know, 5 minutes into the conversation, she's like, okay, you need to take time out before you self-destruct at work. And I was thinking, oh my God, is it that obvious? I haven't even begun to tell you, And it was the best piece of advice I ever got. I took 2 weeks off. I had the most supportive boss. I remember I was going to go tell him that I needed 2 weeks off, and I had the medical certificate, and it was stress leave, like, for the avoidance of doubt. It was absolutely stress leave. But I was ashamed to say it, because I felt like, great, I'm just playing into this narrative of a weak woman that can't take the pressure. And, just as I was about to just say, I need medical leave off, because, you don't really need to say much more, I just burst into tears. And that boss was just phenomenal. And, he's like, what's happening? Why didn't you tell me? And I was like, you know what? It wasn't any one thing. It's not like, I find as a female, I don't know if, others, men, women, whoever, like, relate to this, but for me, it wasn't just one thing, to tell. It was probably years of feeling that I couldn't be authentic to myself, or that I had to watch this, or I had to consider that, or, I wasn't fitting in, or I looked different, or I sounded different. I mean, it was just years and years and years, and the pressure. And then how others, also kind of, treated me. And so I took 2 weeks off. I finally learned how to meditate, because before that I could never meditate. And I learned about the importance of self-care. And I came back from those 2 weeks, and something unlocked in me when I was really reflecting on, how did I get to this point? And I realized the amount of energy that I was putting in to being like what I thought others needed me to be, rather than me just be me. And if that doesn't fit the bill, then okay, then this doesn't work for me. And I came back from those 2 weeks stress leave, and I was just like, oh, I'm just going to be Tammy from the block from here on out. And the relief, even just retelling that story, I can like relax my shoulders again. The relief of just accepting. I mean, I'm constantly reading and researching and learning how to improve myself. Don't get me wrong. I'm not thinking I'm a done deal and that's it. You get what you get and you don't get upset. It's not like that. But I'm now putting the energy into how do I learn how to be a better leader? How do I learn emerging risks? How do I learn about emerging technologies? How do I grow? versus how do I spend my energy trying to be what I think my customers, my team, my boss, my board, etc. want me to be. I'm not putting that energy into that anymore. And it has given me so much freedom of headspace, of time, of self-belief. And so, yeah, that's kind of my story. That's how I got to this point.
It is that journey, though, of people you need to break down to break through. And that journey, I think, for so many people where we don't have strong enough relationships with ourselves to kind of go, hold on a minute, something's not right quick enough. And really interestingly, your superpower is strength. But what I've learned through doing this podcast is people's biggest strength is always their biggest weakness as well. So someone who can take on all the things that you take on and it is their superpower, the opposite side of that is that they can take on everything and it take them too long to break down. And I see it with everyone's superpower, no matter what it is. Someone who's a really like communication, and they'll be like amazing at communication, but then the other side of that is that they spend all their time doing that and not focusing on other things, or they overthink about what other people think about their communication. And I'm seeing this constantly, and you telling me that story then was almost like another proof point of like the strongest people and the strongest women I know will push themselves until they have to break, instead of being, sometimes it pays to be slightly weaker and you'll break quicker.
Yeah, there's probably some truth to that, which, hopefully not for everyone. And, I love throughout your podcast, you've mentioned you believe that you can like learn your way out of anything. And I think that experience that I had, upon reflection, I'm so grateful from it. I learned so much. And so now I've learned how to see the signs in myself when I feel it. I've learned how to communicate them to those that matter, that can help, to create barriers, to say no. I've learned through that experience. And I think this, going back to where we started with this discussion about kind of the strength and how I was supporting you, I think there's something inside of me that also wants to help other people realize their strength before it gets to that breaking point, and, what words can I say that helps unlock what I can see in them, and that, so that it doesn't have to get to that point as it did with me, and if there's a role that I can play in that, then that's what I want to do.
I think the big thing you did for me was, yes, help me see myself, absolutely. But it was the language around we. Like, it was not your problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was not. But having someone on the other end of the phone who was as strong as you are, going, this is what we are going to do, that will be something I re-gift to everyone who is ever going through a problem now, which is, what are we going to do about this? Because you're not over-promising to do anything with them, but you're just saying, to use your language, I'm going to walk by your side as you go through this. And it was, I can hear it. I can hear your accent.
I remember that conversation.
I can hear your accent in my head just going, we've got this.
Yeah.
And where did that come from for you? That we, like, is there a moment in time where you learned that that's what people needed? Like, have you got a personal story that developed that part of your character?
Not that I can recall, really. I think it was just, I knew you needed someone there that was stronger than what you could be in that very moment. And I wanted to, if I could do something to help, there wasn't much I could do really, other than, almost that kind of analogy, take you under my wing and just help you through this. Because I was removed, I didn't have the emotion in it. So I was able to be very pragmatic and, okay, well, what are the steps that need to be taken now? And so for me, that was how I can help. Sometimes we can't help people. We can't physically help them, but we can help them in different ways. And so for me, it was just, I wanted to be there for you. And, I do think it's probably been learned behavior by me, by seeing other people do that for me along the way, that very first, 17-year-old story. But there's been so many along the way. And I've had fabulous sponsors throughout my career that have just, I feel like inside, I've got that fire and want to go and go take on the world. And, every once in a while, someone just saying, hey, I see you and I see that fire and it's valid. And, that has probably, changed the trajectory of my career, my life. And so if I can pay that back, I guess that's where it comes from.
I love that. Let's talk about that fire, Tammy,
Mm-hmm.
because there is fire. There is certainly fire. What are the things that if you could change about the world around you right now, and we won't get political here,
Okay, yeah.
but what are your biggest passions? Because I feel like you're one of the most passionate women I know.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you back something, it will happen. What are the things inside you that are screaming out at you at the moment?
I feel like, I've got to say, I feel like I'm almost exposing myself and creating vulnerability by sharing this, because everything is so politicized now, and it's tough to be open and honest these days. But I'm going to be. I fundamentally would love for people to really feel that they belong as they are. And I went through this exercise at work, and I've been doing a lot of research in Indigenous Australian leadership styles and ways that this beautiful community that we are so blessed and lucky to have access to here in Australia, the longest continuous peoples in the world. And there's so much to learn from them. And one of the things that I really love is how they connect. And so the Indigenous Australian terms of reference, well, they'll first talk about where they were born, where their parents, their siblings, their partners, their children were born. And they spend a lot of time getting to know one another before they head into business talk. And so I started doing that at work, and particularly when I moved into the job that I was in. And that's how I got to know my teams. And we were all on lockdown, so everything was virtual. And I really wanted to connect. And I started having everyone say where they were born. And I started realizing the beauty, the diversity that we had, that may not meet the eye, because oftentimes people are just thinking diversity by gender, or diversity by skin color, diversity by sexual orientation, or whatever it might be. But then when I started really hearing where people were born and, some of their stories and where they came from, and I was just like, oh my God, what a better company we would be. What a better team we would be if I was able to help all these very diverse perspectives come out and share their views and their perspectives when we're coming up with new strategies, when we're thinking about new markets, when we're thinking about new products, when we're thinking about risk management. To me, I just would love to unlock that. I don't need to go outside to find diversity. I have it right here. But there is something that I think kind of corporates do and have done over the last decades. It's like, you walk into your building and your personal life has to stay outside, and you almost put on this kind of plain vanilla mask and go in and do your job. And I think if we could, lift that veil, lift that mask off, and create, a society where people could just be who they truly are, and that's celebrated, that is something that really motivates me and that drives me.
I love the idea of asking people where they're from, just as a really simple, easy, actionable thing. Yeah. I love that. What are the other ways we can help people take the mask off? Because you're almost telling me previously about the mask that you wore for so long that turned into stress leave and then coming out the other, almost like a butterfly, coming out the other side. What are the other tips that you've got for people who want to either remove the mask, or for leaders like yourself that you want to help other people take theirs off?
I think this goes back to the advice that my husband gave me, is know your role, and know that, understand that privilege that you have in that role, wherever you are in the organization. And there's a responsibility for you to role model that behavior. How are you going to ask someone to do that if you're not willing to do it yourself? So, having that courage to start with yourself, having that courage to even talking about it. I really love Brene Brown and Dare to Lead. And One of the things that I love is she talks about when you're going to have a rumble, as she says, when you're going to talk to someone that might be a conversation of conflict, starting it out with, look, the story I'm telling myself is this. How often do we, you and I have a conversation, I walk away, and the story I'm telling myself is Chloe mad at me? She didn't say goodbye when we got off the phone, or, something. I'm just making something up. And I've created this whole narrative in my head. And it's a story that I have told myself as if it's real. Whereas if I just talk to you and say, hey, Chloe, look, the story I'm telling myself is you're mad at me because you didn't say goodbye when we hung up the phone. And you could be like, oh my God, Tammy, my phone died right when I was about to say it. And you just see everyone just relax. So even if you're feeling vulnerable by taking off that mask, that veil, even prefacing with, all right, guys, I'm going to do this. Look, this might not be in character of how I usually am, but I'm going to try this out, and almost preface with what you're about to do, if that helps. And if that helps also create context for other people. If suddenly you leave work on a Friday and you come back on a Monday and suddenly, you're a little bit more true to who you are at home, at work.
And using that same theory, if we were going to take the mask off now, what has been going through your head while we've been recording this?
Nothing. I'm loving it. This is pretty cool, I have to say. Having this microphone. I can say, one of the things that in this day and age where, words get twisted or, media has a life of its own, there definitely is a little bit of fear of, does something get taken out of context? Am I somehow disengaging, part of the community that I'm not intending to? And so that does definitely play in my mind more so than it ever has before.
I just really like that as a question that you just posed there in terms of what's going on behind the scenes, because I do so much work in kind of like the inner critic space, and I ask people to kind of put their hand up if they're like, all right, do you catastrophize? Do you make things personal? Do you do black and white thinking? And literally everyone, for every single one, puts their hand up. And you realize when you get a group of people in a room, like how many of their own thoughts are coming in and their own self-doubt when you bring everyone together. And there's something magical about hearing everyone say, oh yeah, me too. I feel like that as well. And like you've just said about like, I need to be careful about what I'm saying in case it gets taken out of context. I've been having the exact same thoughts through this of like, need to be careful. I don't, and I think there's something quite sad about that as well, that's how we have to be, because you and I are the most unfiltered people going, but there's still that little niggle of, okay, be careful. And I think we take that even in our most vulnerable friendships. There's still moments where you have to wear a little bit of the mask even when you don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, if there wasn't a mic on, then no, I wouldn't. No. I wouldn't be holding back. I'd probably be swearing a lot more. That's another piece of advice my husband gave. Don't swear so much. But yeah, and I guess, it is a shame. But it's where society is now. I don't know if it'll always be like that. That I think that's a little bit more kind of media and social media driven, and I can't really relate to that way of thinking. Again, I think this goes back to my like eternal optimist. Yeah. Where another Brene Brown learning, being generous in your assumptions. So assuming that someone's coming from the right place and starting from there, from a position, rather than assuming they're coming from a bad place or assuming they meant something different. And so that's where I come from. And so it has blindsided me sometimes when people are like, oh, well, but this has happened or this was said. And it's like, didn't even occur to me. That's not where my head was at all. So yeah, it's something to think about.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Zambia for a minute.
Okay.
Because I think we met some of the most incredible women as part of that World Vision project. And I don't think we'd be doing them a very good service if we didn't talk about them and some of their stories. Yeah. I'm giving you a little nod that I'd love you to talk about the tampon one, because I know that's the one you're
You're talking about Hope, my favorite. Oh my gosh. So the Menstruation Club. The tampon one. First of all, Zambia was such an incredible trip, and the difference that World Vision is making in the communities that we visited really filled me with such joy and fulfillment and fortune that we could have a teeny tiny role with sponsoring a child, or at ANZ as workplace giving partner. But so we go out into this village and we meet with a bunch of high school students, and they had formed a club called the Menstruation Club. And it was a club that was formed between boys and girls. And one of like the prominent speakers on behalf of the club was this young 15-year-old boy, Hope. Hope by name, Hope by nature, I think. And I asked him, I said, Hope, how? So the idea of the Menstruation Club is they work with schools and communities, and they improve the sanitation facilities at schools so that girls will come to the school all through the month, not what currently happens where there isn't good sanitation, where, when it is menstruation time, girls will opt out of school, and sometimes they might not come back. And so Hope and the Menstruation Club focuses on working with schools, getting their sanitation up and working, and then actually going to the homes and meeting with the parents and helping them understand that they should allow their daughter to go to school during this time and the importance of that. Oh my goodness. I mean, what fabulous people. And I'm like, Hope, you're a 15-year-old boy. If I were to take this conversation back home, I kind of feel that a 15-year-old boy would be laughing and super like squirmy and uncomfortable. And he said, you know what? I was like that too. And then I learned about how there was half of our society was missing out on education. And then because they don't have education, they don't have access to jobs. And then because they don't have access to jobs, they're just getting married off at the age of 12, 13, 14. And so I didn't want that for my sisters. And I felt that I had a role that I needed to play. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, that gives you confidence. I mean, it certainly gave me confidence in the world that, my goodness, we're hope for president.
Yeah.
And, so many stories of that, of resilience, of not shying away from problems, and then that accountability of like, well, what role can I personally play in uplifting those around me was really something quite moving.
I love what you've just said around not shying away from problems.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm seeing that everywhere I look at the moment. I think people are so, and I just see that with their own little bubble.
Yeah.
People are so scared of having the difficult conversation with themselves to go, this is what I really want, or this is what I really need. And I think on that trip, we saw people that it was life and death, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember, and I don't know if I'll have to cut this out, but I remember sitting next to one of the women from World Vision. And I said to her, how do you guys cope with mental health over here? And she just like looked at me and she went, that's a white people problem. We don't have time for that. And it was a real moment for me because obviously mental illness is, I'm a big mental illness advocate, like mental illness and physical illness should be treated the same.
Yeah, me too.
But in that moment of listening to her, of going, actually it's about survival. It's about having enough food on the table. Yeah. And I just found their resilience, their strength, but their joy and their happiness. Like we were having people dance towards us and celebrate us being there and just feel so welcomed into their community. And I just thought, wouldn't it be lovely if we could take some of that back and bring it to the corporate it to the corporate world and go, this is the answer. This is what we all need.
I know. Strip it all back. I remember that conversation that you had, and it was a real eye-opener. I mean, it was also a real eye-opener to see how happy the kids were. And how little they had, but how much happiness. And I think there have been studies that have kind of looked into this. And it goes to show, and I think this goes back to, you asked me before about like the message for someone who might feel stuck. And I often reflect back on Zambia when, I'm, feeling stuck in some way and thinking, why am I stuck? I have my health, thank God. I have a beautiful husband, wonderful kids. Let me just touch wood. Like I have a roof over my head. I can feed them. Like strip it all back and get some perspective, Tammy. Like, and I think, I often reflect back on that when, and I think we probably all need to, like, what is right in front of us that we are not seeing and that we might be taking for granted. That's got to be the core, and we can't forget that.
You do lose it though, because you get back into the rat race. Like, I remember when I came back from Zambia and I was turning the tap on, and I was like, thank you, like literally out loud saying, thank you for the water, I'm so grateful for this. I was sitting down for dinner, I was like, thank you so much for this. Like, I was just so consumed with gratitude. And then time kind of passes and we go back into our day to day, and it's actually really nice to sit here and reflect on that with you now and take us back to a moment where we couldn't have been more grateful for everything we had when you're watching the comparison of what others have.
I remember because I went from Zambia to Singapore for a work trip, and the hotel that I was staying had a heated toilet. And honestly, I felt really uncomfortable. I felt really uncomfortable that just a flight away, we're talking about concrete in the ground, squatting, and then just, a few hours on a plane, and I'm sitting here with a heated toilet, and it just made me feel like I didn't want the heated toilet, like it was too much. It was very nice, actually, but it just felt, I felt like there's too much difference between, these experiences, and why is that? And what role can we play? What can we do to, continue to be grateful and help uplift?
I've got my sponsored child. Not that that's doing enough, but I do get a message from her every month, and she reaches out I reach out on her birthday, and we've got all of that going now, which is really lovely. Tammy, I want to bring the focus back onto you for a minute. The podcast is called The Limitless Equation. You have obviously achieved so much in your career. Did you know when you started out, if we go back to that, at least that 17-year-old, that you would do everything that you've done now? Did you know that you would be sitting here in front of me as this person?
Yes and no. I don't think I would have thought it was going to be in Australia. But I think something inside me always felt I was, if I'm being really honest, yes, like I just had this aspiration and this vision of myself, kind of running a large business, and just, I don't know why. I honestly, I can't tell you why. It's irrational, and I've had it since I was like a teenager. This has been something I've been kind of scrapping for since my teenage years. And so something inside me, yes. That being said, I keep on surprising myself. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, for example, when I aspire to be a country head, we have these roles within the bank where you can go run, like kind of CEO of the bank in that country. And I just thought they sounded like the most fabulous roles. And so I set out to go for one of those roles. And then I got it. And I remember going out, I was appointed to be the country head for Laos, which was the most fulfilling role personally and professionally. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, wow, I didn't actually think I would get it, And then even where I am now, I'm like, I didn't actually think, like when I first started at the bank, because I didn't see anyone like me in these roles, I didn't ever really think that I would get the opportunity. So that's why I say yes and no. Like, yes, there was something inside me that drove me, but it still like surprises me at the same time.
I love your mentality of like, I'll get there and then I'll work out how to do it. There's the like it.
I'm a little bit, they say there's like men are stereotypical, like they check 2 boxes out of a list of 20 and they're like, I'll figure out the rest. I'm probably more like that than I'm not checking every single 20 box and therefore I'm not going to go for it. That's not me. That's never been me. Again, it's why not me.
Yeah. And I think that's because you have a core, like to your point, self-belief of I can, and the importance of like having that and a vision, which is like, this is where I'm going to go next. I think that I want to help women believe in themselves enough to go, I'm going to push and I'm going to get there. I had someone on the podcast that was like, she wanted to be a CMO. She was a CMO, sorry. And I was like, I don't think you want to be a CMO. I said, I think you want to be a CEO. And she was like, no, like I don't. And I was like, I think you do.
I know. I listened to that one.
Yeah.
I actually know her.
And then there's that element of like, you can do this,
I
like you've
know.
got it. And sometimes you need someone to call it out for you.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I know I'm going to ask for help. I know I'm not going to know everything.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to know everything. And I know that I'm going to ask for help when I need it. I know I'm not going to try to solve it on my own. I know I have people that want to see me succeed. And I think that's the other thing that really has helped me through the years. Like when someone appoints you to a role, they're usually really smart people who have gone through a really robust process that know what they're doing. So even if you don't believe in yourself, believe in them believing in you, you know? And they want to see you succeed. And you just need to ask for help. You don't have to. I don't really relate to the fake it till you make it type of mentality. I don't know why. And imposter syndrome, I feel like those are such negative connotation statements that we kind of brand ourselves with. Like I don't typically hear guys say those kind of words. I don't think you need to fake it. I think you be really authentic with what you know for sure and what you need help with. And even the stuff you know for sure, still bounce them off of things, off of people. And the imposter syndrome one, I don't know a single person, male or female or binary or anything, that goes into a role that feels like they know every single thing about that. You know, and if you do, you have not pushed yourself. You are capable of more. So if you're listening and you're in a role that you know everything inside and out, okay, it's time. It's time to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I don't think it's imposter syndrome. I think it is just, I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and I'm stretching syndrome. You know, it's like building muscle. You know, if you stay with the same weight, you're not building muscle anymore. And you got to tear the muscle a little bit to rebuild it. You know, it's not imposter syndrome of your muscles. It's actually really just building on them and building on what you're capable of. And so, I guess that's how I think about things. Like, not just I'll figure it out, but I'll also ask for help. And I have people around me that I know I can trust and ask.
Tammy, you're someone who can see into the future. And I want you to fast forward 20 years for me now.
Yeah.
And I want you to connect with your wise woman, right?
Yeah.
The version of you that has lived the next 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
What advice would she tell this Tammy in this moment?
Oh gosh, I've got a lot. I think, you know what? You're going to be fine. You're going to achieve the things that you want to achieve. You know, just keep on going. Keep on going. Back yourself. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy the journey. My dad gave me a tip years ago. He said, you know, enjoy life to the fullest because you blink and it's over. And I often think about that. Like, am I just like pausing and enjoying exactly where I am right now? And I'm such a like, okay, we got to move forward. I love to multitask and take things on, but enjoy where I am right now. And, you know, don't limit. Hey, Tam, don't limit your aspirations. Keep going.
I like that a lot. And great advice from your dad. And you're a very empowered woman. So my second from last question is, if you had some advice, and I want this to we are going political now in terms of, I want this to feel like a political speech. Like I want, like, I don't know, you're on stage at ANZ and you're addressing all the women in the business and everyone in the industry that's listening to this. What advice would you give to women about being strong, about self-belief, and about being authentic to who you are?
Okay. I strongly dislike the phrase, you know, women want it all when referring to having a personal life, maybe having a family, having a career, and the connotation that that's too much, that's asking of too much. So for starters, I would say there's nothing wrong with wanting a fulfilling career and a fulfilling personal life. And you absolutely can do both. Don't feel that you have to make concessions on either side. You might need to make concessions on where you set the boundaries and timing of things, but go after it. Go after that role, talk about it. I found one of the things that worked really well for me was, I've referenced before about going for those country head roles. I had to tell like everyone and their mother that I wanted to be a country head, because at that time, most of the country heads, if not all, were men like over 55. And at that time, I was, and still am, a female, and I was like 31 or something. And so because people just didn't expect that in me, I had young babies at home, so there was an assumption that I wouldn't be mobile and willing to go overseas, let alone to an emerging market. By me actually talking about my aspirations, one, I'm a big believer in the energy that draws. But also, I felt that I needed people to know where I saw myself. And that actually helped people to start seeing me in that way. And so talk about it, particularly if you're in roles that are predominantly male dominated, or aspire for roles that are predominantly occupied by people that don't look or sound like you. And this comes down, I don't know if you ever read the Malcolm Gladwell book, Blink. It's an interesting read, and it's basically like people are making judgments in the blink of an eye. And so if people are making judgments in the blink of an eye about who you are and what your potential is based on what you look like, because that's all they've seen before, you're kind of already getting dismissed. So whether it's unfortunate, sometimes you want to be private, but don't be. Be open about your aspirations. Ask for your help. Ask for help from people that know you, that are in a position that can help you. Don't shy away. Don't do it alone. I didn't do this alone. I'm not doing this alone. Ask for help. Ask for people at work to help you, to connect you. People love helping people. That's what I have found. And so ask for it, and then just go for it. All right, I'm going to do it. Fuck it. Go for it. All right, I'm sorry. I had to get it out. I had to. I made it almost to the end. But you know what? Fuck it. Go for it. And don't look back.
I love that. Tammy, thank you so much. We end every episode by asking who your limitless woman is that you would like to celebrate.
Oh my God, I have so many. I have been stressing about this question.
This is the only one you knew was coming.
I am like, I've got Kim, I've got Vicky, I've got my mom, I got my sister. I've got so many people. I'm going to go with Karishma Huda, who is a beautiful individual that I met when I was in Laos. And I'm still friends with her today. And she now lives in Australia. And the work that she's doing in communities to uplift communities out of extreme poverty is something that inspires me all the time. And she's also my R&B sister and can rap LL Cool J like nobody's business alongside me. But really, she is making such a difference and is one of the most humble people I know.
She sounds like a hero.
I'd
love to meet her. Tammy, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being there for me when I just didn't even think I could get myself out of bed, and you were one of the people that did that for me. So thank you so much, and thank you for being here today. Love you.
Thank you.